Buenas tardes, hola a todas, todos y todes. Bienvenidos a RightsCon Costa Rica. Mi nombre es Adriana Fernández, soy coordinadora de programa en el equipo RightsCon y no puedo estar más emocionada de ver aquí a esta comunidad tan increíble en Costa Rica, mi casa. Bienvenidos. Hi everyone, my name is Adriana Fernández. I work as a RightsCon program coordinator at Access Now, and I couldn't be more excited of welcoming you to this 12th edition of our summit here in Costa Rica.
Bueno, hola a todos, todas y todes. Mi nombre es Gaspar Pisanu. Soy el líder de políticas públicas e incidencia para América Latina de la organización Access Now y como latinoamericano también muy feliz de verles a todos aquí. My name is Gaspar Pisanu. I'm the LATAM Policy and Advocacy Manager and I'm very thrilled to see you all here in Latin America.
Whether you are joining us today in person or online, we are writing together a new chapter in the RightsCon history, a history where you, our community, has been the main protagonist, showing year after year the transformative power of resistance, of cross-sector collaboration, and also of solidarity. And I think that this is what makes RightsCon magic, the multiple opportunities that it offers to connect and to transform discussions at the stage and conversations at the hallways into trust partnerships. Y esta energía que es única de la comunidad RightsCon, una comunidad global que nos acompaña hoy de más de 170 países. Esta energía está siempre en movimiento, siempre en transformación y viene hoy a Latinoamérica después de 11 años. Se trata de la primera vez que celebramos RightsCon en Centroamérica y que creemos además es más pertinente que nunca. Gaspar, contanos qué es lo que te parece tan importante o tan relevante de la agenda RightsCon este año.
Bueno, primero que nada, lo que más me gusta, de nuevo, es que sea aquí en casa. Pero lo que me parece que va a ser muy interesante este año es ver cada vez más estas intersecciones en los temas que trabajamos tradicionalmente y nuevas áreas, nuevos derechos, nuevas comunidades que cada vez se ven más afectadas por la tecnología. Solamente para dar algunos ejemplos, este año vamos a poder conversar acerca de la comunidad de migrantes y algunos diálogos que van a estar relacionados a la transferencia de datos biométricos de forma transfronteriza entre los estados. Vamos a continuar cada vez profundizando más sobre cuestiones de justicia de género, donde por ejemplo habrá un diálogo en relación al avance de los movimientos transfóbicos en México, un tema que hoy es cada vez más importante, que es medio ambiente, y va a haber una sesión que a mí me parece muy interesante, que habla de cómo construir estrategias colaborativas para poder enfrentar la crisis climática en América Latina a partir del uso de la tecnología. Y esto solo para mencionar algunos ejemplos, porque también vamos a ver mucho acerca de periodismo, de comunidades rurales, de comunidades indígenas, por lo que creo que eso va a ser uno de los grandes destacados de esta edición.
Y algo que nos parece sumamente relevante es ubicar a RightsCon en el contexto sociopolítico de América Latina y el Caribe. Se trata de una región donde se ha registrado un significativo retroceso en las libertades básicas, una región donde ha habido una reducción del espacio cívico, constantes ataques a la prensa, a los defensores de derechos humanos, a los activistas ambientales. Y en general también se trata de una región que hay que reconocer esos abusos que reciben muchas poblaciones son principalmente ejecutados por los estados.
Sí, y justamente creo que cada vez son más los desafíos que nuestra comunidad tiene que afrontar. No solamente con esto, por ejemplo, de tener que trabajar cada vez sobre más áreas, sino ante estos contextos tan desfavorables. Y ahí es donde destaco el gran trabajo que hace la sociedad civil, la academia, los técnicos y todas las personas que forman parte de esta comunidad, y donde es tan importante justamente el poder juntarnos y conversar y descubrir nuevas formas de colaboración, de cooperación, para poder afrontar estos desafíos de forma conjunta, aportando los distintos conocimientos que cada persona puede traer a la mesa. Y personalmente, agradecer y reconocer mi profundo respeto y admiración por todas las personas que trabajan día a día por la defensa y el avance de los derechos humanos en nuestra región. Yo sé lo difícil que es eso, sé lo difícil que es, o por lo menos puedo entender lo que es enfrentar justamente la persecución, enfrentar ataques directos e incluso lo que implica la subsistencia día a día de una organización. Y pese a ello, se continúa trabajando, demostrando que son a prueba de todo y la enorme pasión que sienten por nuestra región y por la gente que habita aquí en América Latina. Así que por eso quiero agradecerles. Desearles un muy feliz RightsCon, espero que sea productivo. So, thank you everyone so much for being here. We recognize the effort that it takes and we hope you have a great RightsCon.
Welcome to the stage, RightsCon Studio host, Melissa Chan. Por favor, recibamos en el escenario a la anfitriona de RightsCon Studio, Melissa Chan.
It is so amazing to see everyone here in person. Some of you guys might remember last year I was out of that New York City studio. It was all completely remote, so I'm delighted to see humans all together in this space. Quick introduction, some of you might know this from last year, but I'm a journalist, and a lot of my work looks at human rights, democracy, and the fight against authoritarianism, so I'm very excited to be here over the next few days at this stage in conversation with many people discussing these three themes and how it intersects with technology. To start things off, we have a few remarks from a representative of the government of Costa Rica, Viviana Rivera. Viviana Rivera is the Director of Talent and Social Appropriation of Knowledge at the Ministry of Science, Innovation, Technology, and Telecommunications. Viviana.
Buenas tardes, bienvenidos para Costa Rica. Es un placer recibirles. Reciban un atento y cordial saludo y una bienvenida de parte del Gobierno de Costa Rica. Hoy me corresponde representarlo a través del Ministerio de Ciencia, Innovación, Tecnología y Telecomunicaciones. Realmente siéntanse bienvenidos, siéntanse felices de estar en este hermoso país. Va a ser una experiencia, les garantizo, hermosa, pero además nos reúne un momento muy importante y es la discusión de los derechos humanos. Derechos humanos que no escapan a la fuera de línea, ¿verdad? Entonces, en línea también tenemos derechos humanos y creemos desde el gobierno de Costa Rica en esos derechos humanos.
Muy buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Welcome to Costa Rica. It is a pleasure to be here with you and to see you all reunited. My position right now is to welcome you on behalf of the government of Costa Rica. And it will be a wonderful celebration of human rights. And as we all know, the important discussion regarding human rights is not only presential, but it also goes virtually around the world.
Esperamos que este espacio de intercambio de experiencias, de las voces de los expertos sobre cada una de las poblaciones vulnerables, ¿verdad?, a la tecnología, puedan ser escuchadas acá y tomadas en cuenta. Sabemos muy bien que la Organización Nacional de las Naciones Unidas está velando y construyendo el pacto, ¿verdad?, para los derechos digitales. Entonces es muy importante el espacio de reunión que tenemos hoy acá.
We think that it is a wonderful opportunity to have discussions about human rights with the inclusion of all the populations that can have all the impact and that can be vulnerable to technology and new innovations. In this regard, we have to remember that the United Nations is right now surveilling the pact, so it is the perfect opportunity to have these discussions and conversations.
Que este sea un espacio de enriquecimiento y de sana discusión para todos. Bienvenidos nuevamente.
Let this be a space of free and respectful discussion for all of us. Welcome again.
Thank you. Thank you, Viviana. Thank you. This will be discussed in a few minutes. No, it will be. So I am bringing Nikki Gladstone up. She is the director of RightsCon. Nikki.
Hello. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here. I want to join my colleagues, Adriana and Gaspar, in welcoming you to RightsCon Costa Rica, the 12th edition, and the first time we are ever doing a hybrid summit. So welcome to everyone who is here in the room, but also joining us online. It feels like a long time coming, arriving at this moment. Many of you may remember that we actually decided to bring RightsCon to Costa Rica in 2019 when we were still in Tunis at the time. Unfortunately, as I'm sure all of you know, we had to postpone and transition fully online due to COVID-19. And, initially hosting RightsCon in Costa Rica felt like a full circle coming home moment. It was an opportunity to return to where we were, which was a fully in-person original format of RightsCon, while integrating with where we've been over the last 3 years, which is entirely online. And when we first started planning for a hybrid edition of RightsCon, we knew that there were going to be a lot of learnings ahead. We thought about how would we redesign our formats, how would we resource what has effectively become 3 events in one, how would we ensure that all participants could effectively connect with each other, all of you connecting in person with people online. And I think we knew that everybody has at least one story about a hybrid experience gone awry. And so we were really thoughtful about that and continue to try to be thoughtful about that. And as has been the case each and every year with RightsCon, all of you, 2,812 in person and 5,318 online of you, to be exact, joined us in record-breaking fashion as session proposers, organizers, speakers, and participants ready for the journey ahead. Together, we work to design an experience that allows for choice and flexibility between the various options and forms of connection. So if you're in person in this room, there are numerous opportunities to connect with participants online and vice versa. I really can't stress this enough. Don't miss out on tapping into the 8,131 participants from 174 countries who are joining us this year. Unfortunately, and I think really importantly, there were also challenges that have directly impacted a number of people who plan to join us in person this week. And I really want to name and recognize that a visa on arrival process that was designed to actually facilitate access had the opposite outcome. And you know, this is not a challenge that is unique to this event, but it is one that we played a role in, and for that I am truly deeply sorry. And I think, you know, more than being sorry, we as organizers and conveners are committed to taking the steps we need to take to make sure that our community feels safe and welcome in the spaces where we convene. And you can expect to hear from us about that today in the opening ceremony, tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, and every day after RightsCon, because this isn't something that we'll stop talking about when RightsCon Costa Rica ends. And that's because there are many barriers that exist to accessing convening spaces like this one. And visas and funding are just two of them. These are challenges that affect and exclude many people, often from the global majority, time and time again, but they also impact our community and our movement as a whole. Because it is just simply not possible to build a rights-respecting digital future when people with vital perspectives and lived experiences are prevented from joining us in the way they choose to join us. As we head into this week of programming, where we'll host, everyone here will host, and everyone online will host 600 sessions, the most we've ever hosted, and a lot on these topics. We're excited to hear your perspective, your ideas, your concerns, and I hope our first hybrid event will continue to be an important inflection point for reigniting and reimagining our community and the spaces we share. Finally, I hope that you will all join me in giving a round of applause for the RightsCon team. Alon. I'm going to name them, so you have to applause again, but Alon, Sarah Harper, Sarah Abraham, Luis, Daphne, Adriana, Christy, Reeds, Gia, and Igor for their tireless work on RightsCon. I'm sure at least one of them is responding to one of your emails at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. And I did say that your chant about borders was going to be addressed for a few minutes afterwards. I would now like to introduce Brett Solomon, Executive Director of Access Now. He is a co-founder of the organization and also a founder of RightsCon, and he's bringing along Nanjala Nyabola.
Hey everyone. Thanks so much to Nikki. She really has, over this last, I don't know how many years, put her heart and soul into RightsCon. At one point, people thought that Nikki was actually a chatbot, but and sometimes I think she might be because she gets, I don't know, communications coming in at all different angles on every single topic. Can we have another round of applause for Nikki? I wanted to pick up on the issue of the visas because I think it's important that we discuss it a little more deeply. Nanjala is one of our board members, and we just had an emergency board meeting just ahead of this opening ceremony because many of the issues that we're going to talk about this week are actually predicated on the participation and the involvement and the engagement of the whole community. And as Nikki said, some of that community is not present. So, Nanjala, maybe we could just chat for a minute about some of the things that we discussed and how we intend to as an organisation and hopefully as a community and as a sector, try to address some of these issues head on.
Thanks, Brett. And first of all, thank you all for joining us here today. As you know, RightsCon is the flagship digital rights convening in the world, and it's always such a pleasure and an honor to be amongst so many talented, accomplished, incredible people, not just in the room, but as you heard, the 8,000 sessions happening in person, virtually as well. As the leadership of Access Now and of RightsCon, we thought it was very, very important to acknowledge that a harm has been perpetrated against our community. We thought it was very important for us to take a moment and acknowledge that deportation is not a small thing. It's not a thing that we need to gloss over. Unfortunately, violent borders are a growing reality all over the world. Refugees and migrants are the forefront of some of the technologies that we're going to be discussing at this conference, whether we're talking about access, inclusion, but also surveillance tech, privacy. All of these rights that are at the forefront of the challenges that are facing the digital technology space today, refugees and migrants are often on the front line. And so we really wanted us to come together, as we come together in this opening session, to put that on the agenda in all the sessions that are going to be happening throughout this conference. Please, let's keep this issue alive. Let's keep this issue going throughout all of the convenings that we're doing, because a harm has been perpetrated in our community that is perpetrated every day for millions and millions of people who are seeking opportunity, who are seeking safety, or who are just trying to come together with their friends and their colleagues to try and shape the world that we live in.
Thanks so much, Nanjala, and thanks to everybody who's, as we've been saying, has raised this issue. I think both in terms of protest and shouting from the stalls, and also in direct communication, as we've done with the Costa Rican government. You know, I wanted to actually spend most of my time in the remarks that I wanted to give on civil society, because I really do feel like, and this most recent example has shown us how important it is for us to rejuvenate and to nurture ourselves and to resource ourselves. We're under so much pressure. I think we've just had the executive directors meeting, 61 executive directors from over 30 countries, and it's clear how much pressure we are all under as civil society. We're being asked to go harder, to go faster, to respond to the new technologies, to the new initiatives that often even aren't of our own doing. And so I want to shout out to all of the folks who are here, and I want to shout out to all of the folks who are online, who are on the front lines, and of course the people who are neither, who weren't able to make it to participate in RightsCon in any form.
Before we do that, Brett, I really also just want to bring us all back to this issue of community. Above all else, RightsCon is about community, right? We're not just here for the snacks. We're not just here for the vibes. We're here to be amongst people that we respect, people that we look up to learn from each other. And like any community, it's about intention. The tone of our community, the things that we're capable of accomplishing, the things that we're capable of doing in the world, what our community represents in the world, it's really about intention. We choose, we work together, we move towards a goal. That same principle of intention applies in our nation states. We can't keep ignoring the harms that people are enduring at borders and the harms that are being perpetrated in our name at the borders and say, well, I'm working on this issue and this other issue is not my concern. As I said, digital rights, digital technologies, the borders are the front line these days, because refugees and migrants are often people who don't have the same civic rights as voting citizens. And so a lot of things are happening at these borders that we need to pay attention to and to make sure that they're not being perpetrated in our name. What we've experienced here is a microcosm of a broader injustice. It's going to shape the kind of conversations we're able to have. It's going to shape the way in which perspectives are going to be brought into the room. That's the reality of this moment. But we have to think about that as a global reality. Who is getting left out of the futures that we're building because of these increasingly violent and exclusionary border policies? So I really just want us to take that forward with us as we go through all of these conversations. Community is about intention. We're going to be intentional about making Access Now and this experience a learning point, not just for Costa Rica, but moving forward. I just want to invite us all to do that with everything that we're working on.
Thank you. So I had all of these other things that I want to talk about, and if you indulge me, I would like to continue to do so because there are so many issues, as we've heard, 600 sessions over the coming days. But I do want to, as I say, have most of the focus of my comments and my remarks on civil society, because, and particularly those who are on the front line, and particularly those who are, well, to start off with, those who are detained. And I want to first pay my respect once again, as we do every year, to Alaa Abdel Fattah, who is, please, who is an Egyptian activist. You can see his picture there. Free Alaa. He spoke, you can see it, that what was called, RightsCon was originally called the Silicon Valley Human Rights Conference. And we were originally called Access. But anyway, forgetting the branding, you can see Alaa Abdel Fattah is there. This was his last public engagement before he flew back to before the military commission tribunals in Egypt. And he's been pretty much in detention since 2011 when he spoke. I remember having a conversation with him about, you know, Alaa, do you have to go home? And it was not even a question for him. He knew that what was facing him, and still he went. So we pay our respects to him, and also to his sister, who's just had a baby, so he's a new uncle as well. But I'd like to also get a round of rapturous applause, please, for all of the Burmese, the brave Burmese who are fighting the digital dictatorship, the surveillance and the fake news laws that have taken hold in Myanmar. And also to the Kenyan and the Ugandan and the Ghanaian activists who are putting their bodies in front of the legislative bulldozers that would persecute LGBTQIA+ communities. And that is a community that I myself am a proud member of. And to the digital security specialists who are exposing the use of malware and spyware on the devices of Armenian and Salvadorian and other journalists and bloggers, thank you for all of your work. And I think it's important at this point that we do not forget the beaten down but never beaten Iranian protesters, led largely by women who have endured silencing, shutdowns and surveillance. I want to note and to thank all of the people from this particular region, the journalists from Nicaragua, the environmental defenders from Costa Rica, and the digital defenders from Chile. Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting us, to the folks from Central America, from Costa Rica and from Latin America. I think it's absolutely important that we highlight the declining press freedom in the region and the violence and the spyware that is perpetrated against journalists from Mexico, from Honduras, and from Ecuador. And to the communities, as Nanjala mentioned, on the move, who are subject to the collection of biometric data that is being handed to and between governments without their consent. It's coming. But please also come and join me on stage. I want to also just note the vibrancy of the digital rights community in Latin America, who are still communicating on Red Lat Am, which was born at RightsCon Rio in 2012. Thank you also to Derechos Digitales for that. And thank you again for having us back in your region. So I have a few more things that I'd like to say, and I hope you indulge me. I want to acknowledge those who are working within the tech companies, many of whom are here, who are standing up internally for justice and equity. I know it's not an easy road when you're dealing with product managers and you know, all the others within the companies, but there are many tech representatives here who are working hard internally, and there are also many whistleblowers here as well. I want to pay tribute to you from working from the outside. And those who are investors as well, there are many investors in this room who are calling for standards and asking companies that they invest in to put their money where their principles lie. Thank you. And similarly within governments, there are many governments representatives here that are trying to hold the line in their capitals. And those of you who understand that the protection of democracy requires constant vigilance in the digital space. So thank you very much. Thanks. But I also think it's important, essential, vital, that we call out the tech companies that are making the wrong decisions based on the wrong criteria. We want access, not market access. We want data rights, not data mining. We want thought leadership, not thought monitoring. So, as technology finds its way into every part of our lives, and even into our brains, we have a challenge ahead, and I've put this to us for this coming week. Are we going to replicate the mistakes that we made with yesterday's tech, with the new and emerging tech that we are facing today? I'm saying no, I'm hoping no, and I hope you'll join me in that. This time around, we want an alternative approach. We demand that the human rights agenda shapes our technology, not for tech to undermine our human rights, as we are increasingly seeing. And you know why? Thank you. And you know why this is so important as well? Is because we need to do things differently, because the climate demands that of us. Which is why we're so pleased to see the environmental sector at RightsCon this year. Now is the time to bring the power of the digital rights movement to the climate crisis. And I'm also so pleased to see the humanitarian sector here as we grapple with how technology is determining how and where war is fought and how and where international humanitarian law applies. The illegal Russian invasion has reminded us of the world of cyber war, of technical conflict, and of the urgent need for digital peace in Afghanistan, in Sudan, in Syria, in Palestine, and in Ethiopia. So thank you so much to the Access Now team. I'm always astounded by the hard work that you do to achieve digital rights all around the world, but also by your innovation and by your timelessness. Thank you so much. Thank you also to our partners. Let's get a round of applause for the Access Now team. That would be wonderful. And to our partners all around the world, and thank you so much for allowing us to be part of the sector and playing the role that we do in helping to bring you all together. So finally, welcome to all of those who are here at RightsCon for the first time. And I know that there are many of you in whichever capacity you join us, whether it be online or whether it be in person. And to those of you who did not make it in the way that you had planned to, I promise, as we've discussed, that we will work harder to ensure that you have a seat at this table. A statement will be available from tomorrow for individuals and for organisations wishing to sign up in protest against passport prejudice and visa discrimination. Thank you so much.
You know, Brett, the themes that you touched on the last few minutes about community and also avoiding replicating the mistakes of the past, those are the two things that you talked about with former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand, a few days ago. You caught up with her because she actually spoke with you last year at the opening ceremony of RightsCon. And so we want to share a portion of that interview, and the full interview will be available online, is that right?
And later on in the week. And we'll do a Q&A with the representatives of Paul Ash and the representatives of the New Zealand government later this week.
Excellent. So have a listen.
Jacinda Ardern, welcome to the opening ceremony of RightsCon once again.
Kia ora, and kia ora koutou katoa to everyone who's gathered, and I hope it's a fantastic event for everyone.
Thank you. You know, it's been a year since we talked at last year's opening ceremony, almost to the day. There's been a lot of changes, both for you and on a personal front, but also globally. It would be really good, I think, as we kick off this week to understand some of the changes that you've seen over this last 12 months, and maybe we can also get into a bit of prediction as well as what's to come. But yeah, what have you seen over this last?
Look, a huge warm-up question from you, Brett, and it would probably be quicker to talk about what hasn't changed rather than what has. Yeah. I mean, look, there's my own personal reflections, and my own circumstances have changed rather dramatically, but the things I feel passionate about haven't. But in that space, we're seeing such a rapid, dynamic environment right now. So if you're someone like me who, you know, doesn't hold specific expertise in the tech space, certainly not in the generative AI space, but you're interested in healthy democracies, and you're interested in issues like how do we rid the online environment of violent extremism and terrorism. If you're interested in those issues, there's a lot of questions right now and a lot of unknowns. Our job is to, as quickly as possible, create an environment where we can collectively answer some of those questions to the degree we can, or at least create guardrails and, as I would put it, the least regrets option in such a dynamic environment. I think if I were to summarize, I know people have used lots of different analogies for the environment we're in, but it feels to me like, you know, we're in a space where a rocket is being built whilst it's mid-flight. Yeah. And government is being asked to regulate just in case that rocket lands in someone's backyard. And by the way, the rocket can also man itself and have the ability to reason for itself as well. Yeah. So that's where we are. And it's you know, both an opportunity and a massive risk.
Yeah. In terms of your own evolution from being Prime Minister now to being the special envoy for the Christchurch call, you know, it is interesting that of all the issues that you could have, you know, chosen, that you've decided to actually, you know, to a large extent to continue to focus on this issue of eliminating terrorist and violent extremist content online through the Christchurch call, which is great because this issue clearly has not gone away. In fact, it's manifesting itself in different ways. And I think you mentioned generative AI, which we'll talk about in a second. But you know, how it's going to manifest itself, what it's going to look like, and what kind of frameworks and coalitions do we have in place to be able to respond. Can you talk a little bit about the Christchurch call and like what you think over this next coming 6 months, perhaps you might start to focus on?
Well, you raise a really good point. You know, why of all the things and areas that you could dip into, you know, why hang on to the Christchurch call? In fact, it was one of only a handful of things that when I left office, I said to the incoming Prime Minister of New Zealand, in some form, I would like to keep working in this space. And look, some of that's personal. I feel deeply connected to the community here who experienced the devastation of a terrorist attack that took the lives of 51 members of our Muslim community. And I feel an obligation to keep delivering on the Christchurch call because of what it represents. But it's also, I think, a small, you know, reflection on the wider issues we as a society is facing. When I say small, I don't mean in magnitude, but I mean it's by definition, we're interested in issues around violent extremism and terrorism online. But because we're interested in how you prevent that, we're interested in radicalization. And if you're interested in radicalization, you're interested in issues around information integrity, disinformation, you know, and those issues are writ large right now, and they feed into, you know, a much wider landscape around healthy democracies, healthy citizenry, mental health issues, all the things that we should all care deeply about.
Perhaps this is my last question, given time. How do you think about radicalization or content where the content is synthetic, where the content is actually, we can no longer, like when we're dealing with the kind of the certainty of content, radicalizing content, we can kind of deal with it. But when it becomes like, auto-generated, when it becomes synthetic, where it's actually not even, a real thing, so to speak, what sort of additional pressures does that put on regulatory framework? What does it put on how does civil society respond? How do you, identify the originator of the content? What's the source? How does it get rolled out? Like all of these things, I think, kind of are now on steroids with a whole new framework.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And auto-generated, but from what? Yeah. And auto-generated from existing biases, from existing prejudices. And at that point, if you're trying to weed that out, are you then teaching ideology or value sets or value frames, and how fraught that is? These are incredibly challenging questions. And so for me, I haven't landed on the end point. I don't think anyone has.
No.
But I think what we do have to land on is, what are our objectives? When we come together, what are the harms we are trying to prevent? What are the things we all agree on? Our starting point for Christchurch was, we all agreed that, open, free, secure internet was an incredibly important foundation principle, human rights. But also we all agreed that we did not want to foster a place where violent extremism and terrorism was proliferated or promoted. So those were our worked back from there. We need to do the same with the AI discussion. We need to start with those agreed principles, those agreed values, and there will be, and then work backwards from there. Then the debate starts, but we generated this in 2 months. But let's not wait till we have a tragedy to get everyone around the table. It's time that we moved on from open letters to open discussion between us all.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your time, Jacinda.
Thank you, and I wish you every success, and here to support the work that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And just as another reminder, the full interview is going to be posted online. So we're going to have a conversation now. Nanjala had mentioned earlier that it's not just about the vibes and food, but we are going to have a brief conversation, so it'll be vibes, right? Like just setting some of the themes of the next few days. So let me introduce our panelists, or not really panelists, just vibe makers. We have Urvashi Aneja. She is the founding director of Digital Futures Lab. And this is an interdisciplinary research collective that examines the complex interaction between technology and society in the global south. And you also do current research on the societal impact of algorithmic decision-making systems in India and platform governance as well. Welcome. Thank you. Gideon Lichfield is the global editorial director of Wired. And he oversees overall content strategy, vision, and tone across all of Wired's platforms. So welcome, Gideon. And then joining us remotely is Kent Walker, President, Global Affairs, and Chief Legal Officer at Google and Alphabet. He oversees the teams responsible for legal matters, government affairs, content policy, and philanthropy. He has worked with government leaders and regulators around the world and also oversaw the creation of Google's AI principles in 2018. Welcome, Kent.
Thank you, Melissa. Great to be with you.
So let's just start with Kent first, since he's beaming in remotely. Kent, I don't believe you can see everyone here. I don't believe you have the playback, but you're at an event. You've joined an event at RightsCon, where quite frankly, a lot of the people in this room are activists. And they are activists because of negative impacts from big tech. They've become activists as a result of being harmed, they've observed it in their communities or in their country. So it's kind of a skeptical crowd, I guess, what I'm saying, when it comes to yeah, when it comes to bringing somebody in from Google and Alphabet. And I guess I would love to ask you, what reassuring message do you have for the people in this room?
Sure. Let me start out by saying we've been, and I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback here, so if the team could help with that, that'd be great. We've been supporters of RightsCon for a number of years, precisely because we get it. We are devoted to the cause of working together to make sure that our products, our services, our technology is being delivered and developed in line with international standards of human rights. So when Prime Minister Ardern talks about the notion of the new challenges we have with generative AI and these tools, we deeply believe that the folks who are developing and deploying AI have a twofold responsibility to the world and to the HR community, the human rights community, that we're not just mitigating complexities and risks, but we're also improving people's lives and figuring out how we can work together to address social changes. So the good news is, so far, I think responsibly developed AI has incredible potential to be a force for good. That's putting information in the hands of human rights defenders. That's saving people from floods and fires, or expanding access to healthcare, or over the longer term, helping us with some of our biggest social problems like climate change and food scarcity. But again, we recognize, we're clear-eyed about the fact that there are risks with these technologies as well, that this has to be a collective effort that's guided by internationally recognized human rights norms and standards. So that means individual practices by companies, industry standards, and government policies that take advantage of all the opportunities here, the incredible opportunities that are in front of us, the incredible responsibilities that we need to have to drive international alignment on common policies, and the need to enhance security to make sure that we're not going to see the malicious use of AI, and that we can work collectively to address the challenges.
Well, I asked you to have a reassuring message for a pretty tough crowd.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't hear
I wonder,
the response.
Urvashi, you know, you're one of the members of the tough crowd. I mean, you flew in from India. What is your response to what Ken just said?
I think we're still to see evidence of the socially beneficial impacts of AI, but we see plenty of evidence of the harms of AI. So I think that's the first thing. If we're going to buy into the AI for social good, AI for SDGs kind of narrative, we need much better evidence on how that would actually happen. And if that is to happen, we'll need to look at the systems through which it's produced. So the invisible labor that goes into the building of AI systems, the environmental impacts of AI systems. Unless we get that right, it's hard to imagine how AI is actually going to be used for social good. At the same time, I think the other thing that we need to look at is that the development of AI, or the development of machine learning as we see it today, is predicated on the concentration of power, and it reproduces the concentration of power. And so if that's the case, I think that raises a major question about whether AI can actually be socially beneficial or not. I think it's also helpful to cut through the hype around AI. So maybe the last point that I'd leave with is that the term artificial intelligence eventually serves only technology companies. It kind of valorizes this kind of intelligence. It gives AI agentic properties. And we need a different language that we use when we're talking about AI. So if we start calling it statistics or start calling it computational statistics, we might be having a very different conversation.
Gideon, I mean, Wired covers both the companies and the people impacted by big tech. What do you think about what Kent said, and also like where things stand with AI? What's your thinking behind that?
So, you know, it is true, in fairness to Google, they developed these AI principles. They've had working groups of different kinds on trying to develop AI responsibly. They were trying to be cautious about the release of large language models like Bard. And then Microsoft decided to release ChatGPT on the world, or rather OpenAI, sorry, decided to release ChatGPT on the world, and Microsoft decided to put it into its search engine. And Satya Nadella of Microsoft said he wanted to make Google dance, and Google danced. And it raced ahead and it did its own releases. And so we are now, all of us, jumping into the void, holding our noses, because these two companies are out there trying to beat each other. And that is how the fate of the world gets determined. So that's the thing that is scary. This is a technology that has taken off with unbelievable speed, and we really don't know what many of the consequences of it will be. I do think it has potential. I agree with what Urvashi just said. You know, the beneficial uses of it are not yet proven, and I think as people try to put it to use, they will discover time and time again that it is not quite good enough for a lot of the purposes we want it for. Nonetheless, it is possible for it to be misused in all kinds of ways, and there will be various kinds of potentially catastrophic effects from that. But I want to put on a little bit of a good news spin, or a little bit of, I don't know, not good news, but something a little bit more hopeful, which is, I also think that we as a society are having a very different conversation about technology today than what we were 15 years ago, or 30 years ago. It's a lot less naive, it's a lot more cognizant of the risks. Civil society and politicians are talking about things like algorithmic bias and cybersecurity and online harassment, concepts that they didn't really have a few years ago. And a lot of that is thanks to RightsCon. It's organizations and gatherings like this where we have the conversations that are the first draft of the conversations that society should be having more broadly. So I think the hopeful part is that we can have a more intelligent engagement now with how these technologies develop and how we prevent the worst things from happening.
Kent, Google is navigating upcoming AI regulation in different regions around the world. I think a lot of focus can be often on the US and the EU, but you know, India keeps coming up. But I'm also curious about like China and Russia. When people talk about the need for AI regulation, I'm curious about your thoughts about how feasible that is when we are really in a multipolar world right now. It's not the same as it was 50 years ago when people were talking about nuclear agreements. It's changed, frankly. The United States is not the superpower it once was. How is Google navigating all these different domains?
It's, in a sense, not a new problem. Urvashi is quite right. You know, we shouldn't really talk about AI as much as we should talk about ML, machine learning, or computational statistics. And to remember that we've been doing this for many years, right? For the last dozen years, if you've used Search or Gmail or Google Translate or Maps, you've been using AI. And some of the remarkable advances we've seen in, you know, having to advance the cause of folding proteins in ways that will drive medicine forward in dramatic ways. Our team in London, DeepMind, worked on AlphaFold to fold 200 million proteins and make them public in ways that over 1 million researchers are already using to help create the next mRNA vaccine to deal with the next pandemic. So I think people around the world are recognizing the power of these tools, the potential for them to do great social good as well as individual good. So then the question we raise is, how do we make sure that governments are aligned on how best to have regulations that minimize the risks of downsides, but don't stop the progress we're making that have the potential to save hundreds of millions of lives around the world, to really transform access to clean water and food and the like. And the potential of that is remarkable. So you're clearly going to need a multi-speed negotiation around this. You need international accords to deal with the overall challenges we have. But each country, each region, is also going to want to have its own set of regulations that address its unique set of issues and concerns. So our effort has been to try and have not just the work we do at Google, and we oversee the teams that are spending a lot of time on red teaming, adversarial reviews, making sure that when we do release tools, as we did at our I/O event a couple weeks ago, they had been carefully vetted and reviewed to minimize the risks and their disclosures of the limitations, and continue to progress the way those tools work, but also work with governments to try and provide the engineers and the computer scientists at the cutting edge, so that governments are regulating in the most productive and constructive ways they can to minimize the risk but maximize the opportunities.
Urvashi, I just want to turn to you. I mean, you talked about, let's call it statistics, right, not AI. What makes you excited about it? I mean, Kent mentioned some of the positive aspects just now.
Excited about?
About the AI, you know. You know, it's all doomsday, right? I mean, the next few days we're just going to be talking about everything that can go wrong, a lot of the workshops and sessions. I mean, is there something that you look at where you feel positive and excited about? And Gideon, I also want your thoughts on that too as well.
Long pause.
You don't have to say anything if you can't come up with something, but...
Very long pause. I think no. I think there's things that I find more worrying than exciting with the current generative AI moment. I think with generative AI, one of the things that we see happening is the sense of anxiety that countries have about kind of losing out on this AI race, not being able to be economically competitive. It's really heightened that anxiety. And as a result of that, I see that there is an increased kind of impetus for datafication. There is an increased sense that we need to have less guardrails, and in fact, we need to enable more innovation. So I feel the current moment with generative AI is actually more worrying than exciting. But what is exciting is kind of what was being said earlier, that it seems like, you know, we have come a long way in the past 10 years. This morning, we heard some great examples of civil society organizations who are providing communities with the tools that they need to be able to interrogate AI tools, to be able to build tools that actually serve their communities, to be able to kind of democratize that knowledge. So that's an exciting space.
I mean, Gideon, Wired's tone has changed over the past decade. I remember being based as a reporter in the Bay Area, and it was very, in 2012, 2013, it was a very different feeling about big tech than now. I mean, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, you know, I think we went through, like all the tech media, we went through a period of extreme techlash and extreme skepticism and negativity about the tech industry. I think people are tired of doom, and I think people are tired of being told that everything is terrible, and part of what I've been trying to do with Wired is give a sense of agency back. The way that we talk about the big problems of the world, we also try to talk about the people who are trying to solve those problems and what you can learn from their efforts. And I think that, you know, it has generally been the case over history that big new technological developments end up benefiting the powerful, except when the people have a voice and when the people take power. And there's a great book called Power and Progress that I would recommend to a lot of people about the history of technological development and the times when it has gone in the favor of workers and the favor of masses, because there has been civil society representation, because there's been union organizing, because there's been legislation that helps right the power imbalances. And I think the only way that we make sure that generative AI doesn't become another great power imbalance is that people learn to use it and learn how they can make it something that benefits them instead of benefiting the owners of the technology and the creators and the capital that controls it.
Well, unfortunately, thank you, Gideon, this is the only time we have. We're past time, actually. Oh, 22 seconds, that's pretty good. Kent, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. Gideon and Urvashi, thank you.
Thank you.
And that's almost a wrap on the main stage this evening. I want to take this opportunity now to thank the sponsors, without which RightsCon would not happen, and without which this hybrid conference could not have happened. And I'm going to toss over to Adriana on the other stage. She has some housekeeping notes, and then I'll be back here to close this out. Adriana, over to you.
Please welcome back to the stage RightsCon Program Coordinator, Adriana Fernández Calderón. Demos la bienvenida de vuelta al escenario a la coordinadora de programa RightsCon, Adriana Fernández Calderón.
Thanks, Melissa. I just wanted to take a moment to share some reminders that will help you to get started and navigate through the RightsCon experience. The first ones are related to our venue. Remember that all our toilets are gender neutral. You will find a sign at the door. according to your preference. We have also a lactation room. We have also a medical room for medical emergencies and situations in distress. And we have also a multi-purpose room for mindful activities, for multi-faith worship, or in general, just to take a breath from all the things that are going on at RightsCon. Regarding how to make the most of the RightsCon experience, we want to remind you that for every session that is happening in person, there is a session happening online. So we really want to encourage you to participate and engage with the online community. We could not have the amazing program that we built this year without their contributions. And we made the hybrid experience precisely for you to be able to make that bridge between those discussions. Regarding participation in social media, we just want to invite you to participate of the debate using the RightsCon hashtag. And finally, with so much going on, we just wanted to remind you that we have a desk for information, whether you're finding information about what is our approach to execute a RightsCon that is safe, that is productive, and that is inclusive for everyone, or if you want to raise any kind of security or safety concern. Finally, I wanted to remind you that RightsCon is governed by our Code of Conduct. That is our policy that ensures that RightsCon is a space free of intimidation, discrimination, and any kind of harassment. If you want to raise a potential Code of Conduct issue, please reach out to our team at the email conduct@accessnow.org. Y finalmente, como empezamos en la apertura, como les dijimos, este año el tema de género es súper importante en nuestra agenda, es de hecho una de nuestras prioridades regionales. Y este año estamos reuniendo a una comunidad global de activistas feministas que están resistiendo y que están reivindicando nuestros
that are existing and reivindicating our rights. Within this framework, it is an honor, therefore, for me to introduce to you this feminist Costa Rican band, Toca Tambo, who uses their music to share the wisdom of migrant women, sexually diverse communities, and Latin American community wisdom as well. Finalmente, como inicié diciendo en nuestra ceremonia de apertura, la violencia de género es una de nuestras prioridades temáticas para este evento. Nosotros estamos reuniendo comunidades globales de activistas feministas que están resistiendo y reivindicando nuestros derechos. Es mi placer, por lo tanto, presentarles a Toca Tambor, una banda feminista costarricense que reivindica la experiencia de mujeres migrantes, de comunidades sexualmente diversas y de Latinoamérica en general. Bienvenido, Toca Tambo.
Buenas tardes para todas, todos y todes. Es un honor para Tocar el Tambo acompañarles en esta jornada. Estamos honradas como Toca el Tambo de hacer presencia con nuestra herencia.
To state our presence with our ancestral wisdom and inheritance, reivindicating all African descendant communities with chants that we feel and perceive as diverse and broad feminities. We are Toca Tambo, and we invite you to play, sing, and dance.
Toca el tambor para bailar, toca el tambor para gozar, toca el tambor para bailar, toca el tambor para gozar. Suelta la tambora, palmas.
gózalo. ¡Cumbia! Cumbia, cumbia, cumbia.
And that's it from RightsCon Costa Rica this evening. To those who are tuning in remotely, we hope you enjoy the next few days. And as always, stay engaged. Goodbye for now.